Well, I tell you, I have one word to describe you guys after spending the day here, and that is you're extremely competitive, I have to say. So I'm a little in awe of you. No, this is a great place, and I'm really happy to be back in Texas. I did live in Fort Worth for a year when I started in my working career a long, long time ago in another industry, and I fell in love with Texas then, and it's really nice every time I come back. I love it. It's my second favorite state in the Union after, of course, my home state. So I'm going to talk for about half an hour, 40 minutes, and then I'm going to allow some time. I hope we have time for questions because, you know, I went to a little work to put this show together, so I'd really like to get paid back. And the way I get paid back is by you asking questions, because then I sort of know what's on your mind. So I'll be thinking of those as I go through. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly and touch on a lot of different topics that we're dealing with in horticulture that I would love to get comments on. First of all, I thought I could just go around the world and give you little highlights on what's happening in other parts of the world in terms of floriculture. Of course, worldwide, we think it's about a $20 billion industry at the grower level, about $6 billion here. We did a study of sort of worldwide where the different markets are. We're in a lot of different markets around the world, and really what we came up with after this long study of all these different markets is that the best market for the future is, guess where? Right here. North America, because the population is going to be growing, and we have money to buy flowers, and most of the other growth is in countries that don't really have a history of floriculture. So North America is still the number one market for us in terms of potential. Western Europe is pretty flat, very little growth there in horticulture. When I speak of horticulture, I'm speaking of bedding plants, cut flowers, and pot plants. Pretty much, basically, those three things. Other than that, the consumer trends are pretty much the same as they are in the United States in terms of what consumers are doing. Eastern Europe has more potential. They tend to be catching up. There's a lot more growth there than there is in Western Europe, for sure. Japan has had a horrible 10-year downturn in the industry. It's also losing a lot of the cut flower market over to China, and they're not having any babies over in Japan. It's amazing. So the old people are staying old for a very long time, and there's nobody to support them. So it's not a real good situation demographically in Japan, and therefore not a huge upswing potential in our products. Australia is even worse. They have a 10-year drought there. They're not even calling it a drought. They're just saying this is our world. And they don't even use the word drought anymore because it's permanent. Bedding has been down 40% just in the past couple of years. Now, just this week, we got a call from our Australian company, and they're having, of course, they're right in the middle of spring, and they're having a fabulous spring, and it's rained. So, you know, these slides get old the minute you put them in. The interesting thing about Australia is because it's had such a downturn and bedding is down, it's caused the growers and caused our company, as well as a lot of other companies, to innovate. Okay, what else can they sell to the consumer? So they've been scurrying around trying to find things, and it's very interesting to see our Australian company is one of our most innovative because of the horrible conditions that they've been working under. So that kind of goes to show what happens. India and Southeast Asia, in terms of our products, are very challenging because, you know, you throw something out and it grows. They don't really have seasons. So if you think of the history of bedding plants and pot plants and horticulture as we know it, it's really in the temperate zones. So if you look at these tropical areas, it's very difficult to try to figure out what to do for these areas because it's just not so easy. China has a good potential. The Olympics is causing a lot of bedding plants to be used there. If anybody's been to Beijing lately, driving from the airport into the city, you see something like 50 miles of median just plantings. It's just unbelievable. So, and they're getting more of a Western outlook. The big problem there is they don't have good media, and they don't know anything about growing. So that's a real challenge, and we're trying to do some things to help there. So Asia, the big issue with Asia is it's growing and it's good for horticulture, but everybody lives in apartments there. Nobody has houses, and we're used to our industry was built around landscapes. You have a big yard and you plant 48 plants of impatiens. That's kind of the mentality we have. It's a very different mentality just to work with balconies and things like that. So that's the big challenge for Asia. And this is an old map that I found that has the biggest cities in 2015, and I think something like 10 out of the 15 or something are all in China, where the biggest cities are going to be. So Asia's where the population growth is going to be, particularly in China. So, as I mentioned, the history of horticulture is really in the temperate zone, and we have a very view of horticulture as being temperate, so the tropical areas are very challenging for us as an industry, and pretty much what we do is ignore them because we don't know what to do about them. And there's been such growth in our zones, so to speak, that we haven't really had to deal with them. So it's kind of an interesting situation. So the challenges in this aspect are there bedding plants that could be used in tropical areas? What do we do about balconies, gardens? And for the millions of people, particularly in Korea, who live in apartments with no balconies, they want plants for indoor, and we have very limited things to give them for indoor. And this is a big problem, particularly in Korea. They've been yelling and screaming for 10 years, please get us things to grow indoors. There's such a limited range. So those are some of the challenges that we're looking at in terms of international. I'm going to go through about 10 or 12 different trends, and so that's why they're numbered. So that's sort of an international snapshot. The second issue we have, and now I'm going to go zero in on North America here and Western Europe, is what we call gardening fatigue. And what is gardening fatigue? Well, it's a whole bunch of things. This is a quote that somebody told me the other day, and I thought, wow, this is gardening fatigue. No time to do any gardening, completely different outlook on gardening than we have in the future. And this is another quote that somebody said, okay, this is gardening fatigue. No work. I don't want to do any work. I just want a beautiful garden with no work. That's kind of the mentality now. So just a few statistics. These are all different kinds of statistics, but they all point to the same thing, that there is gardening fatigue. The average spending is down. The number of hours and people spend gardening is down, if they do it at all. So the DIY is changing to DIFM, which is do it for me. So the DIY market is going down. The DIFM, or as somebody said the other day, DSOIFM, do some of it for me, because they want to feel like they did a little bit of work, that is going down, and the DIFM is going up. And this is landscape services, which many of you students, I think, are interested in. And that's good reason to be, because it is going up, and the do it yourself is going down. This is another graph that says exactly the same thing. The upper thing is the services, and the others are the retail spending when people go and buy it themselves. So this is where the growth is. And this is the change from gardening to decorating. Okay, very important thing in the industry. More done by services. People don't want to work. Time is the big issue. Nobody has time to garden. Well, you have time, you do what you want to do, right? So they're just not taking the time to garden because there's so many alternative things to do. And the gardeners are dying out, and the decorators are taking over. So, gardening has all the things that are bad. It's work. We call it work. We say go out and work in the garden. Why do we say go out and work in the garden? Because that's just what we say. It's not cool. It takes time. So, somebody else said the problem is, gardening is work, but having your landscaping done for you, that's sexy. That's the thing that everybody wants to go and do. I don't know why, it's just the way it is. Okay. So, some of you have probably read Charles Handy. He's a great philosopher guy. And he said there's two types of people in the world. And of course we want, the second type of people are the type that are more spending the money on the gardening. The people with money and no time. So let's just compare, just really quickly, the mentality of gardening versus the mentality of decorating. Very, very different. In almost every aspect, it's completely the opposite. Gardening takes a long time. It takes a lot of knowledge. You have to concentrate on something and focus. You have to have a huge amount of ability to delay gratification. It's sort of a never-ending process that you're a gardener your whole life, right? Decorating is just the opposite. Short term, I want it right away. You can change, you repaint your living room every time your mood changes. You go out and you buy a big container mixed container of plants and have it for your party, and then the next week you have a different group over and you go and you buy another pair of plants. It's very quick. And it has to be fast, and it takes fewer plants. Issue for the industry. Okay, and it's at the end of the season, it's done, and you start all over next year. It doesn't continue from year to year. Very different mentality. And again, this is not a new trend. We've been sort of looking at this trend for a few years, and people have been talking about it. I'm sure you've read about it. But the industry hasn't really figured out what to do about it yet, all the way from the breeding all the way down to the marketing. We're not really marketing to decorators. We're not breeding for decorators. We talk about it, but we haven't really integrated it. So I think this is a huge challenge. Decorators want very different things than gardeners do, and that's something, as I said, we haven't really figured out yet. And they also don't want to go through, this is from a retail aspect, you know, they don't want to go through a lot, you know, gardeners will go and visit a whole bunch of garden centers and go out and look at things and compare, you know, it's a hobby. They spend a lot of time on it. Decorators just want to go out and buy it and come back. So the whole retail aspect is completely different for a decorator than it is for a gardener. And they don't, as we have these things called consumer, what are they called? Consumer Buzz Live, I was going to say. And where we have, our publishing company does it, and you have just consumers on a panel, and the audience asks them questions. And one of the women said, well, you know, I don't go to garden centers because I wear shoes from Nordstrom's, and I don't want to get them dirty. Okay, so that's what they do. It's what they want. The other issue with decorating is lot sizes are down, the size of lots are down 27% over the past 15 years. So you don't have room to garden. A lot of people, they just can decorate because they just have a small space around, you know, huge McMansions on little teeny lots. And then gardeners are into zones. Decorators don't care about zones. So we're into zones. Oh, this is zone 5. This is zone 5. They don't care. And because they throw a lot of stuff away at the end of the year, it doesn't matter about zones. So can't get too hung up on zones. So this is a new mentality. So the challenge for the industry is, how do we appeal to the decorators? I say we haven't done it yet. We haven't figured it out. And I always say for every trend, there's a counter trend. And I believe that true gardening may come back in maybe a different form than it was before. And should we, or how can we make true gardening sort of cool again? I'm very interested in that. Some people say I'm nuts. I don't know. We'll see. So those are the two challenges for that whole trend. Okay, just going to retail for a minute. The retail experience for the young generation, new gardeners, and for decorators is pretty bad. We terribly confuse these three groups. They go into a garden center, they're completely intimidated. The best story I have on that is we have an outside board of directors. So we have these guys who are very successful in their businesses, don't know anything about horticulture. And one of them was newly remarried for the second time, just retired, tons of money, one of the brightest people I know, like 50 years old, 55 years old. And he calls me up one day, and he's been on our board for a couple of years, so he knows a little bit about it. He wanted to have a nice yard because he's on the board of our company, right? He calls up and says, he was just like, his voice was quivering. He said, Anna, I want you to send Jim now over here like this afternoon and tell me what to do with my garden. I said, what is wrong? And he said, for 2 weeks, I have been reading every gardening magazine I can get. I've gone into every retail operation I can find in the Chicago area. I've been on the internet. I've talked to everybody. He said, I'm so confused on how to start, I can't even tell you. And he didn't know anything about it. He didn't know where to begin because we confuse gardeners completely. So that's what, when this happened a few years ago, I thought, oh boy, and then I started noticing it, and it's absolutely true. And you talk to people, and they all say the same thing. So we make it as difficult as we can for new people to enter in the industry. We make it very confusing, and we're not getting any better. We also make it difficult for decorators because we're more gardening oriented. And the young people, I could spend the whole time talking about young people and how they think completely differently, and we don't do anything for them because we're still not into the young people thing. But I won't go into that because that would take all day. Intimidation and confusion is what we give these three groups that we don't really get at. So how do we simplify the experience? We don't have an answer to that, and it's very challenging for the industry. We talk a lot about this. How do we simplify the retail experience? How do we let this guy who's got tons of money, waiting to spend thousands of dollars and doesn't know how to do it? If he hadn't had me to call, he would have not had any flowers in his yard. And there's a lot of people that go, can't figure it out, and then end up saying, oh, I'm going to go play badminton instead or something, whatever people do. So we really confuse it, and we prevent new gardeners from coming into the industry. Sustainability. We've talked a lot about that in the past day, visiting some growers and talking to the people here. This is a huge trend in the industry. We say it's the fifth wave, okay? You had plastics and soilless media in the 50s and 60s. That opened up bedding plants for everybody. It was fabulous. I mean, plastics are, I don't hate plastic. Plastics made our industry. Then the mass marketers came in the 80s, changed everything. Plugs came in, changed everything. Vegetative came in and changed everything. And now we have the fifth wave of horticulture since World War II, and that is sustainability. So this is a huge change, a huge wave, and a huge thing that we need to take advantage of. So, think about gardening. What does gardening use? Everything that's bad. Okay? I'm taking this view, this contrarian view, to just force you to think about it. We use a lot of chemicals, we use a lot of water, we use a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time, and you have to have physical work. All five of these are the main inputs of gardening, and they're all negative. Okay, so what do? As Carrie Hernan said, we are the original green industry, but even the oil companies are promoting themselves as being green. And here we are, the green industry, and we're not doing anything about it. Now, actually, honestly, since I made these slides, which is like a few days ago, things change. This is changing so fast. The whole sustainability thing is about 2 years old. It really started a year ago last July when Walmart, president of Walmart came on the cover of Fortune magazine saying, I'm going to go, Walmart's going to go green. He was holding I don't know if anybody noticed, he was holding a thing of, a basket of peppers, and he was standing in a cornfield. And I actually used that slide in one of my talks, and it was a group of master gardeners, and I didn't even notice it, and they went, what is he doing holding the peppers in a cornfield? But anyway, it's funny. But Walmart has actually been very good. They've been really pushing it. So we need to get on the bandwagon and do something to take advantage of this, and we're not taking advantage of it. So, think about sustainability. We need to think about sustainability in a very broad way. It's not just a biodegradable pot. It's not just reducing chemicals. It's a whole bunch of different things. It's really how you view your whole life. You have to sort of get the sustainability virus. So the way we're doing it, and what we're telling our customers to do, and many of them are doing it now. It's caught on so fast. Look at it from an internal aspect. So we have production locations around the world. We're getting all those guys are getting together, figuring out how to grow seed organically, figuring out how to reduce chemicals, reduce water, all the sustainability stuff. And they're working internally so that we do that internally, so that we have organic seed and we have all these other things. And that's just what we do because that's the right thing to do. We don't probably not even going to market it. We just do it because that's a good thing to do. And then you look at it externally. So if you're a grower, you look at it internally, what can I do in my production, and then what can I sell in the market? So we're looking at it these two ways. What can I sell? What can we sell? How can we help growers become more sustainable? That's our job. How can a grower sell into the retail sustainable products? So those are the two ways. When I figured this out, it helped a lot because it was all sort of a big jumble. Then we figured out that sustainability has huge side advantages that we didn't even notice when we got into it. We've been in this for about 6 or 7 years now, quite a long time. And I talked about it for about 2 or 3 years out in the market, and I got rolled eyes and change of subject, and I just couldn't believe it. So now everybody's coming to us saying, tell me what to do. It's just completely turned on 180. The good thing about sustainability internally is that all our employees are excited about it, and they can get involved in it in their own way. A bunch of them got together and said, why do we have styrofoam in the cafe? And Mike worked with them to get styrofoam out of the cafe. Now we have China, we're civilized, and real, knives and forks, and we save we don't use so much styrofoam. And it also is a way, I think, that we can breathe new life into the industry. We haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I think it's a huge advantage that maybe we can do. And it's a way to attract these young people who are interested in sustainability. My daughter's age, 20, they're all talking like this. And this is a way we can get new people to come into horticulture. It's a way we can get new people to come into the industry. And the big advantage, and we were talking about this earlier today, is that sustainably grown plants, although it's not quantified yet, are just prettier because they're not so stressed, I think. And we've seen this in our garden, and we can't quantify it, although we're trying very hard. But if they are prettier and they withstand more stress, then at retail they'll last longer, and with the pay-by-scan that's very important. There's a whole bunch of advantages here that we're kind of just beginning to discover. So sustainability is a huge detail, a huge trend. This is changing almost as we speak, really, even this week and last week. But the mass retailers, Walmart particularly, also Home Depot and lesser Lowe's, but all three of the big, those are the big three, are ahead of the growers in this. They're coming to us saying, let's get programs together and let's go out and get the growers involved. Now, some growers are picking up very quickly on it, but I mean, I'd rather see the growers ahead than the mass retailers, and I think it's going to catch up pretty quickly, but it's kind of an interesting state. And again, you don't have to go completely organic. You know, small steps are valuable. And I always use the medicine example because, you know, you go to the Mayo Clinic and it's all traditional, you know, not holistic, but just traditional medicine. And then you have these really sort of left wing, sort of off the wall alternative people. And I think medicine should end up, I hope, in this country in the middle, because there are some very important things that the holistic people are doing and very important things that Mayo's is doing, but it needs to get into the middle. And that's kind of the way I see agriculture and horticulture. You don't have to go completely organic, but hey, let's figure out what we can do to be better for the environment. So the challenges are, how do we sort of catch the sustainable virus in the industry, and how do we position the industry as the green industry that it is? We haven't figured these challenges out yet. Okay, 5, consolidation. This has been happening for a while. Everybody knows it. It's at every single level. Just last week, one of these smaller seed companies in Europe was bought by another seed company, so this is happening at every level. This is the last 20 years of the big boxes. When many of us started in the industry, there were no big boxes involved in selling, and now, of course, they have about 60%. I don't think it'll get a whole lot more than this, because the independents are starting to come back. The good ones are investing, the good ones are doing well, and that's a great sign, a very healthy sign. So, counter trend, is there a move back to independent garden centers? Better quality, better service, and this is something that we're looking very closely at. And as I said, many of the really good independents are investing in their businesses and being very successful. A lot of the others are going by the wayside, but the ones that are really interested are doing really well. So the challenge is, I think, in the industry, we have to keep the big growers and the small growers. Because if we have only big growers or only small growers, we're not very healthy. We need that diversity. We need both the big boxes and the independents. They serve completely different functions, completely different markets, and there's advantages to bigness, there's advantages to smallness. And I don't think we want to go one way or the other. So unlike other industries that have gone completely over to mass marketers, we had a board member who was in the office supply business, and he told a harrowing story of you know how in every town there used to be a stationery store? At least in my town, a little stationery store. Hell, it was one of my favorite stores. I love stationery stores. There's virtually no stationery stores left now. It went all the way in 10 years from 100% independent to 100%, what are those things called? Staples, Office Max or whatever. In 10 years, 100%. And he told the story about 20 years ago, and I was, oh my gosh, you know. But it's not going to happen to us, I think, clearly, and that's good, I think. Branding is a big issue here. I think the battle of the brands, you know, again, this is confusion. The consumer goes in, and all these brands, the brands don't mean anything to the consumer. They're looking for a pretty healthy-looking plant, and it doesn't matter sort of about the brand. But there's probably potential for brand, but not the way we're doing it now, because we're creating a lot of confusion. And as far as we can tell in all the consumer surveys we've done, there's no brand recognition now of any of the brands at retail, except for a couple of them maybe, but still a lot of potential. So again, we have to make it easy. We have to figure this branding out. Different people have different views of what's going to happen with the branding. Who Who knows? But we have to make it easy, because right now the branding is making it worse for the consumer. Okay, blending of green industry. This is kind of a strange one, I think, but kind of hard to describe it. It's kind of like plants are becoming part of a whole big trend. This is a little bit of the decorating trend. So plants used to be, you used to go and buy plants, and now you sort of go and buy outdoor living space or decorating or something, and plants are just kind of part of that. I don't know if anybody follows me. But it's a little bit of a different thing. So plants are kind of shrinking in importance in relationship to the whole outdoor living. Call it the incredible shrinking plant display. So you go into a garden center, and this is an actual photograph of an actual garden center, and you go in, and what do you see? You see gift shop and apparel. And sometimes you have to say, okay, plants. Where are the plants? And you have to go like all the way around back, and then you find them. And of course, garden centers used to be only plants, and then they are selling a lot of other things, and now the other things are taking center stage. And I know why, because there's reason for this. I'm not being critical of garden centers, but it does change things for the industry. So, I mean, there's so much other things people are spending their money on for outside, which didn't exist before. Nobody had outdoor grills much. The container was not important. Now the container is important, and you spend a lot of money on the container, maybe not so much money on the plant. There's a lot of bling and frou-frou that we call it, all this sort of accessory stuff. And hardscape. People are spending a lot of money on hardscape, paving, statues, hardscape, which is great for garden centers that are selling hardscape. I'm not being critical of hardscape. I'm just saying that what happens is the plant becomes a smaller and smaller part of it. So in many aspects, and for all of you maybe would-be student landscapers in the room, remember your plants. Because hardscaping is in, that's where a lot of the landscapers make a lot of the money, is in the hardscape. I know, because I just had my house done, and they kept wanting to do more and more stone. I'm going, cut the stone, I want plants. I said, yeah, but we make our money on the stone. So anyway, plants are sometimes an afterthought. So retail. Do you guys know Urban Outfitters? Anybody know Urban Outfitters? It's a store. Anyway, they're opening up a new chain of garden centers. This is, I think, very significant for the industry. It's called Terrain, T-E-R-R-A-I-N, not capitalized. Terrain, and this is wrong. It's not supposed to be capitalized. But anyway, they just came out with this announcement, and it's a whole new type of garden center. I knew this was going to happen, but we didn't quite know who would do it. And it's an outsider doing it. That's always the way it happens. The innovation comes from outsiders. So Urban Outfitters is coming in. It's going to be kind of a boutique garden center, and you're going to be able to eat lunch there. You're going to be able to buy, super designer gardening gloves, whatever. They're going to have plants, but it's a whole new way of garden center, and this is going to be very interesting to see how this does. So the challenge is, how can we keep plants really an important, distinct product? Flowers not just for beauty anymore. Flowers serve a lot of other purposes besides feeding the soul, which is what we always say. And Chicago has been a leader here, creating a lot of tourism and a lot of money for a lot of the shops. And it's just a wonderful city environment. If any of you have been to Chicago lately, people come from all over the world to see how Chicago did it. And they did it very well, and they're still doing it well. 87 miles of planted medians within the city limit. It's fabulous. So our product can do a lot of things, and we haven't got this message out yet. It's very frustrating. That's Chicago. Also, decrease in crime. This is a graph that shows they planted these three apartment buildings in Chicago, the low income, and the ones where they planted up one and not another, or planted one high and one medium and one low or something. Can't remember exactly. But what they found out was that crime went down in the planted areas, because they're not sure why. People stayed outside more. They kind of defended their area. They talked to each other more. Crime went down. And even domestic violence went down. Inside crime and outside crime. This is fabulous information, and here we are. I don't think as an industry we've really gotten this out. I mean, every landscaper should be taking this to every city in the United States. So challenge is, how do we tell these stories? We talked a little bit about this at lunch, about some ideas for that. Okay, the international aspect of floriculture, it's always been very international. I joke that my grandfather had seed in his pocket. This is not a joke, it's actually true. He had seed in his pocket and he was going to see his good friend Mr. T. Sakata, many of you know that name, in Japan when he died in 1949. He actually had the seed, he was taking it. And so seed has always been at international business, way before international was cool. So I did a little thing about our wave petunia that some people know, and it involves a whole bunch of different countries. And just about every product that you can think of, some even a lot more than this, have roots in a lot of different countries. It's a very international business, which I think makes it interesting. Many people are following the low cost. This is a trend in horticulture. People are moving from Kenya to Ethiopia within Africa to produce for Europe because Ethiopia is cheaper than Kenya. You can get into a trap just following low cost around the world, and it's not always the best thing to do. Cut flowers, as I mentioned, are going over to China. Seed production a lot is going from Chile and places like that to China for the low cost aspect. So there's lots of different things going on internationally. I look at the counter trends, and I keep thinking there's going to be a counter trend of people wanting locally grown things. You know, you go to Whole Foods and you look and they have a little sign, you know, these pears came from, you know, Joe's farm down the road here, and these apples came from our friend up in, 20 miles away. And there's a huge, and farmers markets are getting really big. This is a counter trend against globalization, right? So I keep thinking, what does this mean for horticulture? Because the consolidation in the international aspect is going one way, and then you have this local sort of thing that my daughter doesn't want to buy vegetables if they're produced in Wisconsin, which is like an hour north. You know, she wants it in Illinois. So there's this other sort of trend, which is local production, and I haven't figured this out yet. If anybody has any ideas, I think it's kind of an interesting aspect. Okay, 100% transparency for all products. Think about this if you're a grower. You know these things, you get this on food, all the ingredients, all the facts, blah, 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 blah. Okay, think about what if you had to do that for products. And I gave this challenge to Will Healy, one of our technical guys, and he came up with this for 1,000 geranium plants. And don't ask me what it means. I don't know what it means. But he says there is, you know, he did the best he could to really quantify what is our product? What does it use? How many miles does it get transported? Think about that. How much chemicals do we put on it? How much water do we use? Blah, 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 blah. Now, I hope we won't ever have to do this, label our plants. But I think we should start thinking about that because it forces you to think, oh, wow. Maybe I should cut down on those chemicals, or maybe I should find an alternative for this, or something like that. So it's kind of interesting to think about it that way, because that's kind of the way the world's going. 100% transparency on everything. So think about if you have 100% transparency on all your products, what would it do? We're starting to think that. It's not pretty for a lot of us, let me tell you. Okay, this was the front page. Somebody mentioned this at lunch. This was the front page of the gardening section of the Chicago Tribune in May. Okay, it says, if you read the fine print, it says, this year, don't buy any annuals. Because those annuals are produced in plastic, and that plastic's going to last 400 years in the landfill. So don't buy annuals. May, Chicago. Okay, our customers in Chicago make all their money in May. So this is the kind of stuff we don't want to see in the gardening section, or anywhere else for that matter. So anyway, this is that. Then we have things like, this is another interesting, you know, secondhand smoke has become kind of a big political issue. Well, this says that the chemicals that your neighbor puts on his lawn is like this new secondhand smoke. Okay, so if you have Chemlon come and spray it, then, you know, you're polluting the atmosphere. This is the kind of stuff that people are starting to write about. This is why we have to keep thinking about 100% transparency, because it's real scary what could happen. So we need to get green and transparent before we are exposed as an industry, or before we are forced to, I think. We should do it because it's the right thing to do, not because we're forced to. Okay, just a few product trends. These are some of the things that are hot in certain parts of the world now. I think the most interesting one is the last one. There's a lot of interest, especially in our gardens, of plants that don't flower, like succulents and grasses and fantastic foliage and weird textures and things, which is kind of neat because there's a lot of diversity there. We have to keep the wow products coming. This is a challenge. As a breeder, it's a challenge. As a grower, it's a challenge as a distributor, because the wow products are difficult to produce. They're difficult to get through the chain. Sometimes they look lousy at retail, but they look great in the garden. I mean, there's all sorts of challenges with wow products. But decorators want wow products. Waste. I can't help mention this. There's so much waste in our industry. It's incredible. We're trying to get rid of it. There's waste at every single level, and you start thinking about it, it drives you crazy. The number of plants that are thrown away at all levels is just incredible. Even from the seed to the plugs to the whatever, it's all along the line. And the way to and people are starting to talk about this a lot more now. We have to get this waste out. Again, that's what pay by scan is all about in a way. And we're all sort of guilty of it. And we've been able to have waste because the industry's been going up every year since World War II. And now all of a sudden, we hit this big, flatness, and all of a sudden waste we can't afford waste anymore. So we've had the luxury, if you want to say, of being able to have the waste. So we need better forecasting, merchandising, and information. It's the only way to get rid of the waste. Just a couple of other thoughts. How to attract bright young people into the industry. I've talked a lot about this in the past, and I think we need to figure out how to use sustainability to do that. We're the original green industry. There should be something there we can use. And also, somebody said this the other day in one of the community colleges, this is the only real career, I don't know if this is true, so I haven't thought too much about it, but it sounds good, where you can combine art, science, and business. And I think that's true. I mean, I know it's true. I don't know if there are other careers where you can so much. Almost everybody in our industry, there's a lot of art to it, there's a lot of business to it, and there's a lot of science to it. And if you don't have all three, then you're really at a disadvantage. So I think that's a very cool thing. Maybe we can talk more about that. Horticulture has huge advantages. I was talking to Elizabeth, who's interviewing me today, about this. It's very complex for its size, which is really terrific, because that means there's a lot of diversity in it and there's a lot of opportunity in it. And one person can have a huge impact on it. We are the original green industry, all the other things that I've talked about. There's lots of room for entrepreneurs as well as corporate types, so there's both. These are 10 characteristics that we look for in people. Notice experience is not one of them. We're looking for certain personality types. Again, that could be a whole lecture on the different things, but that just shows you what we're looking for in our industry. It's not the sort of normal types. And this came out in an article. I love this quote. This is Reinhold Holtkamp, who has a violet place in Tennessee. And this is very true. It's true for growers as well as for us. And I can't close without promoting American Bloom, which Stan Pomer is involved with American Bloom. He's here and he has some wonderful booklets. American Bloom is one way we can really revive the industry. This is a sort of competition among towns for not just planting, but also community involvement, a lot of other things besides just planting. And they had a big banquet and announced the winners a couple Saturday nights ago in Rockford, Illinois, of all places, which won. And so this is wonderful. And I'm ashamed to say that Texas has never even had an entrant into American Bloom. And what did I say about you guys are competitive? How can you stand it? I mean, you haven't even had a town enter. I mean, I think you're the only state in the union that hasn't had a town enter. I mean, so please.
Throw in the gun.
Huh?
You're going to throw the gun.
Exactly. I mean, you got to get into this. So see Stan, and he's got these wonderful brochures, and you've got some towns here who could be really competitive in it. It's really fun. It's a really fun thing, and it's great for everybody. So anyway, that's it. And I'd love to have any questions that anybody has. We have a few minutes. Yes.
Anna, one of the things that has always been a big problem, I think, in our industry, you're addressing a little bit, is all of what we do in production comes down to the garden center or the retailer that's selling our products. What do you see that we can do to change this, because we can market to the gardeners, but they go to the garden centers and there's nothing there to buy, or there's none of the products that we're talking about and the innovations. What can be done?
I mean, it sort of stops at the retail level, is what you're saying. Yeah. Well, we're trying very hard to work with the retailers. I mean, we work directly with all the mass marketers. We work directly with independents to try to work up programs and try to get these products out there and figure out a way to merchandise them. I mean, we're doing that, and I think the trend in the industry is even in the past 5 years, is a lot more partnership between the growers and the retailers than there was before. I mean, before it was just like nobody even talked to each other. So the trend is in the right direction. It's just not happening that quickly, and it's very tough. And that's not a very good answer, but
it's a tough answer.
It's a tough. I mean, there's no solution to it. It's just kind of keeping. My father always said, Anna, you've got to understand there's a difference between a problem and a dilemma. You know what the difference is between a problem and a dilemma? A problem has a solution. You just have to find a solution. A dilemma has no solution. And he said, if you have a dilemma, you just have to keep working at it. Coming at it different ways, just work at it. Just keep working at it. And you make little teeny progress. It's a dilemma. It's not a problem. There's no solution to it. So you just have to keep working, and it'll get a little bit better and a little bit better. I know, it's exhausting. I know. You're exactly right. What else? Yeah.
Do you foresee vertical integration becoming more of a component in the industry than the box stores and that, or is that probably my concern?
You mean like the box stores getting into growing, or? Yeah. No, I don't think that will happen. You have vertical integration at the breeding and distribution level. I don't think the distributors are going to get into growing. And you get a lot of growers going into retailing. So I guess at the top and maybe down here, you have it. The big boxes are not going to get into growing. That's the last thing they want to do. They want to get rid of as much work as possible, as many of you in the room who are customers will know. So, no. There's a lot of small growers who are getting into retail. That's a big trend. And that's good. Yeah.
Your study on the crime rate that went down, was that in Chicago?
That was in Chicago. That was University of Illinois. They did the thing. They did the planting. It was the Robert Taylor Homes, which is a really bad area. And the University of Illinois did it. It's published. It's about that thick. And I went through the whole thing. And, I mean, all you need is the one graph, you know. So.
That ties directly with the broken window theory from the tipping point.
The broken window theory, that if you fix the broken window, and it's like if you get rid of the graffiti during the night.
Yeah, and in landscaping they talk about all that.
Yes, I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah, I know it's incredible. And, you know, I think we should do, I don't even know if we need more studies. I think we just have to figure out how to get that out. And, you know, the problem with Chicago is that everybody comes to Chicago to see how, we didn't do it, but how Chicago did it. And really how Chicago did it is Mayor Daley. Because this guy's got a personality and a force, and he just, past 10 years, he's just rammed it through. So it's really, you've got to have somebody who's just a champion in terms of the whole thing, and he's done it. So it's hard to duplicate that. Yeah, Stan.
Now, that research was done by William Sullivan at the University of Chicago. I think it was Champaign-Urbana.
Right.
And it was the School of Human Ecology. And it's incredible.
Oh, the school, you mean the horticulture people didn't do it?
Well, it was a joint thing.
A joint thing, yeah.
Ecology and hort.
Wasn't that Kuo guy? Did he do it too? Francis Kuo?
That was the wife of Sullivan.
Oh, okay. He knows the inside story.
It's an incredible study. The results, I mean, it goes even farther than what you just brought up, and that's powerful. But when you read the whole thing, you know, with pride and self-esteem, I mean, it was just, it went on and on and on.
So we have to get this story out. I mean, this is crazy stuff that we're not using it. So, good. Okay, that's good. I'm sure you can get it on the
You can.
computer, whatever, web, www. Well, yes.
Okay, I got a question from a non-horticulture guy. I'm kind of slow sometimes. Can you help me understand your specific definition of sustainability in your business? I see some matter in here, plastic containers, less chemicals, you know, better water utilization.
You know, we've collected about 20 or 25 definitions of sustainability in our company, and the guys who are working on it keep giving me all these definitions, and I mean, it's just, I really should have one that I could sort of spout out at you, but I don't. I mean, we're looking at it, we have chosen to look at it in a very holistic way. Really what you have to decide is how broadly you want to look at it. For example, we have these rice pots. And our guys were at some place, I forgot the other day, last week, and they were showing the rice pots to the people. And it's made with rice instead of plastic. And the only thing it was a buyer from some place. The only thing she was interested in is how we treated the employees in the place that grew the rice. Okay, it just so happened, this was great, it just so happened that Greg Trapka, the guy who was showing her, had just been to China the week before, believe it or not, this is a coincidence, and had taken pictures and had the pictures on his computer, and had visited the plot and showed her the pictures of these wonderful, healthy, you know, not young people getting whipped, you know, just really good people, clean place, you know, very good place, and showed her the pictures, and she said, okay, that's sustainable. That's what she was interested in, how we treat the employees, and it wasn't our plant, but how they treat the employees. So everybody's got their own definition, but if you look at it in a really holistic way, it's everything from how you treat the people to, you know, whether or not it's biodegradable. But I mean, it's all really goes down to inputs, reducing the inputs. So I don't have a good definition. Maybe Stan has a good definition.
And some of your companies have just recently become Veriflar certified. What's your feeling on industry-wide certification programs? I'm a libertarian at heart, so I don't like, you know, programs like that. But no, Veriflar is very good, and that's why I asked the question.
I know, and well, it's not government. Veriflar is not government, which is good. Anything that's not government is good. So I think Veriflar is good. And Walmart is saying, hey, you guys want to be a vendor for Walmart? Get certified. So I mean, it doesn't matter what we think. That's the way it's going. And I think it's good. And Veriflar is very good, and you don't have to, it's not an extreme thing. If you show intention, and if you know, it's reasonable. It's very reasonable. And Veriflar is very good.
What happens if let's say, Lowe's decides they want their own certification program, which is different, because there isn't any national standard of certification. If there was, I think everybody could get behind it. But I think for competitive reasons, you're going to have Walmart that wants Veriflar, you're going to have somebody else that wants MPS, you're going to have somebody else that wants a third party. Well, do you think, how would a grower deal with something like that?
I wouldn't be very happy. So, I mean, I don't know if that'll happen. Lowe's might just say, oh, we'll just use Veriflora. I mean, I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen. But I don't think it, I mean, Veriflora is going to be a big deal now since Walmart came out with this, so I think they'll be the ones, maybe. I hope so. We don't need any more complexity. We got enough complexity already. So, yeah.
And don't know if this is much more than a question as a comment, but you can help me on the back end. I answer garden questions on the radio in Houston, and the confusion that you talked about early on, I think, is that when people go to the big box stores, they don't get any help.
Yeah.
Because the people running the cash register there don't have the answers for them that the people running the cash registers in the garden centers 30 years ago did. Thus the confusion and the dip that you were talking about. It's great that Walmart wants to corporately get involved in the sustainability issues, but if there's no program in place to have employees in place to help the consumer, the confusion only grows.
That's right.
From my perspective.
That's right. Now, what Walmart is saying, and that's a very good point, because now you have increased complexity. This is sustainable, this isn't sustainable, this is the petunia, this is the petunia. Oh my gosh, what do I do?
And I don't know, they just pulled me from the jewelry department to run the cash register.
Right, that's exactly right. Now, if everything, see, I think sustainability 10 years from now, the term won't exist because everything will be sustainable. So if everything can be sustainable, then you get rid of the confusion because there's no choice. And that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to grow all of our seed organically, so you don't have to say this is organic and this isn't, and have two different SKUs and all this stuff. So if Walmart can make everything in the garden center sustainable, then it's one less decision that I mean, It'll take a while, but that's the idea. And that should be the idea for the whole industry. So.
One more question.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear your presentation. I work in fruit, and I'm a fruit breeder. And there's a lot of similar trends in that industry as well.
Huh.
I mean, the carbon neutral thing, that's big.
Yeah.
There's stores now, I know in England saying, we're carbon neutral, and we got to do this. We need local production as well as to offset the stuff we import in, because they want things all year round. And so you're getting, a lot more complexity for that reason.
Yeah.
Because they were going for it, well, I'll get wherever I can get it cheap.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, well, I got to get local now too, and keep getting that.
Yeah.
Getting a lot more diversity with types of products. The convenience thing. People want to make dinner but don't want to work. Want to garden but don't want to work. The same sort of things are going on.
That's interesting. I think local production could become a really big deal.
I think it will.
Yeah, and I believe in it personally. I mean, I really believe in it because it keeps communities strong. And I'd rather have an unorganic. Let me say this right. I'd rather have a pepper that's been drenched in chemicals coming from my neighbor than an organic pepper flown in from Chile. I mean, I think local is more important than organic from my personal standpoint. So, yeah.
Okay, we've come to the end of our allotted time. Excuse me. We would like to say thank you to Anna for being here and providing us a stimulating lecture on the driving forces impacting the industry.